Gender-based analysis.
What?
Gender-based analysis? Wait, what's up with that? Gender matters!
Okay, let's start with the basics. Gender-based analysis, or GBA, is a way of thinking critically about how our gender biases, ideologies, and assumptions operate in science. It's a way of thinking critically about the world. It lets us question things that we might simply take for granted as true, and it forces us to confront how our gender assumptions influence the way we do research.
Right. We don't just find facts out there in the world, we actually create them by asking questions in particular ways of particular groups of people in particular circumstances. So this doesn't mean that the knowledge we create in psychology is invalid, but it does mean that it's shaped by our context and our assumptions. We don't just do research in a bubble.
With GBA in your analytical toolkit, you stop simply accepting information as it's presented to you, and you start asking questions about the research findings that you encounter on a daily basis. And these findings aren't just in your textbooks. They're in the newspaper, online, all around us.
GBA encourages us to consider the relationship between gender and research. This means asking how gender norms may have influenced things like
what research questions were asked?
How was the research designed?
How the findings were interpreted.
Asking these kinds of questions makes us more critical, engaged consumers of psychological research. GBA is not something that just makes us better consumers of research, it also helps us become better researchers.
Psychological science still falls short of true gender inclusiveness. For example, most of the time we just assume that all of our participants are cisgender men and women.
Cis what?
Cisgender refers to anyone whose gender identity matches the sex that they were assigned at birth. But there are plenty of folks who don't identify as cisgender. There's transgender, non-binary, genderqueer.
Transgender is just anyone whose personal identity and gender does not match the sex they were assigned at birth.
Non-binary is anyone whose gender is not, or is not exclusively, male or female.
Genderqueer is anyone who identifies with neither, both, or a combination of male and female genders.
People can identify in all kinds of ways beyond the binary of man or woman.
And gender isn't just a variable that we can isolate and control. It actually influences our research from start to finish. So GBA pushes us to ask questions like, how does gendering work to systematically exclude certain people from pursuing psychology?
Or exclude people from being studied? Or exclude people from benefiting from psychological research?
Or what effects do ideas about gender have on our research, our theories, and the way we apply psychology to the world?
How can we use this information to create more effective and gender-equitable psychology and psychologists?
How about an example? For decades, psychologists reported that men have better spatial abilities than women. So that would mean that men are better able to perceive spatial relations and manipulate objects in space. We actually have a common stereotype based on this very idea, which is that women have a bad sense of direction.
Recently, researchers tried something new. Rather than asking about spatial relationships, they switched things up. Participants were given the same spatial tasks as in previous studies, but this time, questions were asked in a different way.
Instead of asking participants about spatial relationships between abstract objects, the task was made more personal. It was presented as a test of social ability, of perspective taking, and suddenly the gender differences in spatial ability disappeared. So by reframing the way the task was presented to participants, a long-standing and widely accepted gender difference disappeared.
And this is just one example of what GBA lets us do. It helps us rethink the way we ask questions, helping us to design research without reinforcing gender stereotypes.
Thanks for checking out our video. Click the link below to explore the rest of the videos in this series.
Also take a look at Psychology's Feminist Voices website for more resources about feminism, gender, intersectionality, and psychology.
Remember, gender matters.